You won't believe this, but the person who destroyed my marriage wasn't a stranger. It wasn't even a friend, it was my own brother. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 35 years old, living in Austin, Texas, and until recently, I thought I had built the kind of life most people would envy. I had a stable job in real estate, a comfortable house in the suburbs, and a wife I believed was completely devoted to me. Samantha, Sam, as I always called her, was the kind of woman who seemed to care about every little detail in our marriage. She remembered anniversaries. She left me sticky notes on the fridge with sweet reminders. She texted me during the day just to ask if I'd eaten lunch. For years, I believed we had what people call a solid marriage. Sure, there were small disagreements about bills, work stress, or family visits, but nothing I couldn't handle. And then there was Daniel, my older brother. Daniel was the kind of guy everyone in the family admired. He was 38, charismatic, always knew how to walk into a room and grab attention. He worked in commercial construction, made good money, and had this reputation of being both adventurous and irresponsible at the same time. My parents often compared us, saying Daniel had the charm, while I had the stability. I never thought much about it. What I never imagined was that the two people I trusted most, my wife and my brother, would cross a line that could never be uncrossed. Looking back, I see the cracks that started forming long before the explosion. I just didn't pay attention. Because when you love someone, you don't go looking for shadows in the sunlight. Sam's laughter, Daniel's easy way of joking, the fact that he visited more often when I was busy with work. At first, it felt like family bonding. I thought, great, my wife and brother are getting along. But soon, those little signs I ignored would turn into a storm I never saw coming. At first, the changes were so small that I almost laughed at myself for even noticing them. Sam started leaving her phone face down on the kitchen counter. If it buzzed, she would pick it up quickly, smile, and say it was just a client from work. Sometimes she would step outside to take calls, claiming the house was too noisy, even when it was just the two of us in silence. Daniel began showing up at the house more often too. He'd bring over takeout or a six-pack of beer, telling me he thought I could use a break from work. On the surface, it felt like a nice gesture, two brothers hanging out, my wife joining the conversation, all of us laughing, but there were little moments that didn't sit right. Like the way Sam would pour his drink before mine, or the way Daniel would make a joke and she'd laugh a little too hard, touching his arm as if they shared a private language. I told myself I was overthinking. After all, they were family. Still, I couldn't ignore the late nights that started piling up. Sam claimed she had back-to-back deadlines at her firm. She'd come home past 10 p.m., exhausted, carrying her laptop bag like a trophy of dedication. She'd collapse on the couch and sigh, telling me how stressful the audits had been. I believed her, because why wouldn't I? She was my wife. But then Daniel started making comments that cut deeper than I realized. One night, after a couple of beers, he chuckled and said, "Man, Ethan, you're too nice to Sam. You don't know how to keep her on her toes." Sam smirked, rolled her eyes, and said he was just being ridiculous. I laughed it off, but something inside me shifted. I brushed it aside. I thought, this is what marriage is: stress, family, and trust. What I didn't know was that trust would soon become my blindfold. My first real suspicion came one Thursday afternoon. I had finished work early and decided to surprise Sam at her office with her favorite cinnamon latte. When I got there, the receptionist looked confused. She told me Sam had already left for the day, saying she wasn't feeling well. That wouldn't have been strange, except Sam had texted me just an hour earlier saying she'd be working late on an audit. I drove home expecting to find her resting on the couch, but the house was empty. Her car wasn't in the driveway. I called, and she answered, saying she was still at work, buried in files with her coworker. That was the first time I felt the floor shift under me. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I told myself I needed proof. The next weekend, I decided to keep an eye on her. She said she was going shopping with a friend. I followed her car discreetly, my heart pounding like I was in some detective movie. She parked downtown, and just as I thought I had her, Daniel pulled up beside her. They went into a cafe together, sitting side by side instead of across from each other. They leaned in close, whispering and laughing. I snapped a photo from across the street. But when they spotted me, or maybe just by coincidence, they suddenly stood up. By the time I ran inside, they had vanished. Later, I realized the cafe had a back exit. Another time, Sam told me she had to attend a weekend work seminar in Dallas. Something felt off, so I drove up on Sunday morning. I walked into the hotel lobby, pretending to be a guest, and checked the directory. Her name wasn't on the conference list. My stomach turned. As I was about to give up, I saw Daniel's truck parked in the far corner of the lot. I ran up to the third floor, where I swore I heard their laughter behind a closed door. My hands shook as I reached for the handle. But before I could even knock, a maid opened the door across the hall. I looked back, and the room was empty. Curtains fluttered by the open window. They had slipped out through the fire escape. Each time, it was like chasing shadows. I'd get close enough to feel the heat of the truth, but never enough to catch it. And every time, I felt more like a fool. A husband playing detective, always one step too late. The Dallas weekend was the moment my doubts turned into obsession. Sam said she had a mandatory 2-day seminar for accountants. She packed her suitcase with business casual clothes, heels, and even printed a fake-looking schedule she left on the kitchen table. I told her good luck, kissed her goodbye, and then quietly decided to follow her. I gave her a few hours head start before driving north. The highway stretched out endlessly, and with every mile my chest tightened. By the time I pulled into the hotel's parking lot, it was late Saturday evening. I scanned the rows of cars and froze. Parked near the back, half hidden behind a minivan, was Daniel's pickup truck. My stomach dropped. I walked into the lobby, acting like I belonged there. The receptionist asked if I needed help, and I lied, saying I was looking for the seminar group. She gave me a puzzled look, then checked the system. There was no such seminar that weekend. No conference, no registration under Sam's name. The ground felt like it was splitting under my feet. Still, I pushed forward, riding the elevator up to the third floor. That's when I heard it, laughter. Hers. I knew that laugh. It came from the end of the hallway, muffled through a door. I crept closer, pressing my ear against the wood. Daniel's voice was low, teasing. Sam's response was breathless, playful. My blood boiled, but before I could burst in, I heard movement. A chair scraped, feet shuffled, then silence. My heart pounded. I grabbed the handle, locked. At that exact moment, a maid came out of the room across the hall, startling me. When I looked back, the door I'd been leaning on was wide open. The room was empty. The curtains billowed from an open window. The fire escape rattled faintly as if someone had just gone down. They were gone. Again, I stood there like a fool, staring at the emptiness. I had been seconds away from catching them, and once more they slipped through my fingers. It was almost comical, like I was the punchline of some cruel joke. Walking back through the lobby, I felt a mix of rage and humiliation. Everyone around me seemed to be living normal lives, checking in, grabbing drinks, laughing with friends, while my world was unraveling in shadows and lies. That night, driving back to Austin, I promised myself one thing: next time, I wouldn't miss. After Dallas, I became obsessed. I told myself I wouldn't miss again. But the cruel joke was, every time I tried, I still came up short. One evening, Sam told me she was headed to the gym. That didn't sound unusual. She'd recently signed up for a new fitness membership. I waited 15 minutes, then followed. Her car was right there in the parking lot. I sat across the street, watching for nearly an hour. People came and went. The lights inside dimmed as classes ended. But Sam never walked out. Finally, I walked into the gym, pretending to look for someone. I checked the locker rooms, the workout floor, even the smoothie bar. Nothing. Her car was still outside. Her membership card scanned in the system, but she wasn't there. Later, I realized Daniel had probably picked her up at the back entrance. It was like chasing ghosts. Another time, I trailed Daniel's truck on a Friday night. He drove with that reckless confidence he always had, weaving through traffic, blasting music. I stayed a few cars behind, gripping the steering wheel. He pulled into a busy strip mall, parked for a few minutes, then suddenly pulled out again. I followed, only to realize he had switched vehicles in the lot. Sam's sedan was gone from where I last saw it. By the time I doubled back, both cars had vanished. Each attempt ended the same way, me, alone, clutching at shadows. The humiliation burned worse than the betrayal. I started to feel like a clown in my own life, a husband hiding in his car, snapping blurry photos, thinking he was a detective, only to be outsmarted by the very people he trusted. But beneath that humiliation was something sharper. Anger, not just at Sam or Daniel, but at myself, for giving them so many chances to slip away. Every near miss etched a promise deeper into my mind: next time, there would be no escape. It happened on a Tuesday night in late spring. Sam told me she'd be working late again, buried in audit files, Her tone was casual, routine, like she'd said it 100 times before. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to sit home waiting for another lie. I opened the Find My app. The little blue dot showed her phone. But not at her office. It was sitting in a mid-range hotel 15 minutes away from our house. My chest tightened. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I just grabbed my keys and drove. The parking lot was half empty. That's when I saw it. Daniel's pickup truck parked 2 rows over. My hands shook on the steering wheel. There was no denying it anymore. No more missed exits. No more ghost chases. They were here. Together. I slipped inside the hotel. Heart pounding. The hallway smelled faintly of bleach and carpet cleaner. I followed the numbers until I heard voices. Muffled, but clear enough. Sam's laugh, soft, breathless. Daniel's voice, low, hungry. I pressed my ear to the door. The words cut like knives. Daniel. He'll never touch you the way I do. Sam. With you. I feel alive, like I never did with him. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. There it was. The truth. Not shadows. Not suspicions. Words. Words that burned hotter than any photo or GPS ping. For a moment, I thought about kicking the door in, tearing the whole scene apart. But instead, I pulled out my phone. My fingers were steady this time. I recorded the voices, the laughter, even the moans that followed. Proof, cold, undeniable proof. I walked back to my car in silence. The night air felt heavy, pressing down on me. Every step echoed with finality. This wasn't just betrayal. It was annihilation. And the worst part? It was my own brother's voice echoing through that door. I drove home that night with the recording still playing in my head. Every word replayed like poison on a loop. But strangely, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even call Sam. Instead, I went to bed in the guest room and stared at the ceiling until morning. That's when I realized the power of silence. For weeks I had chased shadows, running after doors that closed just seconds too soon. But now, I had the truth, and with it came clarity. The next day, I called in sick to work and sat at my kitchen table scrolling through divorce attorneys. I found one with a bold tagline on her website, specialized in adultery cases. 15 years of experience, that was all I needed. When we met, I showed her the photos, the screenshots, and finally, the recording. She leaned back, nodded slowly, and said, "This is airtight. She can't twist her way out of this." Her advice was simple. Don't confront Sam yet. Keep living as if nothing had changed. That way, she couldn't hide assets, move money, or prepare her defense. The element of surprise was my weapon now. So that's what I did. I came home every night, smiled politely, ate dinner with her. I listened to her fake stories about deadlines and late meetings. She even complained about Daniel once, saying he borrowed money and never paid her back. The irony almost made me laugh out loud. At night, I would retreat to the guest room. She asked what was wrong, and I told her I was just stressed with work. She tried to kiss me, to reach for me, but I pulled away gently. Every rejection made her more confused, more restless. She didn't know I was quietly building the cage she would soon be trapped in. And in that silence, I felt powerful for the first time. Not because I caught her, not because I was punishing her, but because for once, I was the one writing the script. She thought she was the actress, sneaking behind my back, but really, she was the audience, watching as I prepared the final act. The day finally came on a Thursday afternoon. My attorney arranged for the divorce papers to be served directly to Sam at her office. I wasn't there to see it, but I didn't need to be. I knew the moment it happened. Because my phone lit up like fireworks, 6 missed calls, a dozen frantic texts. By the time she pulled into our driveway, her face was flushed, her hands shaking, the papers still clutched in her grip. She stormed into the living room and shouted, "What is this, Ethan? Divorce papers? You can't just drop this on me without even talking." I stayed seated on the couch, calm. "Actually, I can," I said quietly. She froze, staring at me like I was a stranger. "Why? What's going on? Is this because I've been busy? Because I've been stressed? This is insane." I let the silence stretch before answering. "It's because I know about the hotel." Her eyes widened. For a split second, I saw panic flash across her face. Then came the denial. "What hotel? I don't know what you're talking about." I reached for my phone, opened the gallery, and handed it to her. Photos of her car parked next to Daniel's truck. Screenshots of her location at the hotel. And finally, the recording. I hit play. Daniel's voice. "He'll never touch you the way I do." Sam's voice. "With you. I feel alive, like I never did with him." Sam's face crumbled. She dropped the phone like it had burned her skin. Ethan, please, I can explain. No, I said, you can't. She tried everything in that hour. Minimizing, it was just a mistake. Blaming me, you've been distant. I felt neglected. Begging, please, it will never happen again. I love you. But none of it mattered. Because love doesn't sound like that recording. As for Daniel, he disappeared. Blocked my number. Never showed his face at family gatherings again. Cowardice was his final act. I looked at Sam one last time, tears streaking her face, and said, "You loved me while sleeping with my brother? That's not love, that's betrayal." And for the first time in weeks, my voice was louder than my silence. The divorce process wasn't quick, but it was decisive. Sam tried every trick she could, crying, stalling, even asking for counseling, but the evidence was clear, and my attorney was sharper than her excuses. Within months, the papers were finalized. Our house, our savings, even the dog. Everything was divided down the middle. Daniel never resurfaced. He vanished from family gatherings, skipped birthdays, and ignored my parents' calls. For them, it was a double heartbreak, losing the son they trusted and the daughter-in-law they thought was loyal. For me, the hardest part wasn't signing the papers. It wasn't even walking through an empty house where laughter used to live. The hardest part was realizing that the two people I trusted most had been lying straight to my face. And I let it happen for so long because I wanted to believe in love. But over time, silence gave me strength. I didn't confront her with shouting. I didn't punch walls or beg for explanations. I stayed quiet. I gathered proof. And I walked away. And in that choice, I found freedom. A year later, my life looks different. Smaller, quieter, but honest. I rent a modest apartment. I cook my own meals. And when I sleep at night, there's no phone buzzing with secrets I'm too blind to see. Here's the lesson I carry. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from enemies or strangers. It comes from the ones closest to you. And when it does, the loudest revenge isn't rage. It's silence. It's moving on without giving them the satisfaction of breaking you. In the end, my silence said everything their lies never could. The truth is, betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the people you'd never expect. Those closest to you. The ones you trust the most. But here's what I learned. You don't have to destroy yourself trying to understand their lies. The most powerful response isn't rage or revenge, it's silence, clarity, and the courage to walk away. In that choice, you protect your dignity and your future. If you've ever been through betrayal, or if this story touched something in you, share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes, telling your truth can help someone else find theirs. And if you'd like to hear more real stories like this one, consider subscribing. It helps us keep sharing voices that deserve to be heard.